they needed that may be false.
Right. So that's all true, and I fully accept that. I'm just saying, from a theoretical point of view, a conclusion should not be accepted if the premises are false.
Correct.
Now, of course, it gets a little bit murky where what if one premise is true and one premise is false? What does that mean about the conclusion? Well, it depends on how the argument is formed. Sometimes you need both premises to be true in order for the conclusion to be acceptable. On the other hand, sometimes they're independent of each other, and they're different lines of evidence. So, for example, evolution has multiple lines of evidence pointing towards it. So even if it turns out the fossil record is complete bullcrap, like creationists claim, we still have other forms of evidence like DNA and evo-devo, which is developmental evolution.
Yeah, embryology.
Embryology for
comparative anatomy, molecular stuff, genetics.
Right. So, of course, you can't know everything. You can't know all facts. So when you enter a debate or you're listening to people argue, you cannot know all the premises, whether they're true or not. So a very useful thing to know is logic. Now, you can know nearly all the fallacies or all the important ones. So you should be able to pick out fallacies when they occur. So this will also help you when you're in a debate and when you're thinking critically about a topic. So it's extremely important to know your logical fallacies. And there's plenty of websites online, as well as listening to our show. You'll hear plenty of good logical fallacies, not from us, but we will discuss them, I hope.
Yeah, we hope.
If we do use logical fallacies and in support of our claims, please let us know, because we want to be accurate. So that's why it's important to know your logic. And of course, in debates, things can get a bit messy. A big part of critical thinking is also realizing that language can be unclear. It's important to understand how it can go unclear with things like ambiguity or vagueness for different words you use. Sometimes a word can mean two things, or the words being used are too generic and not specific enough to what you're talking about. So before you respond to an argument that might have multiple meanings, it's important to figure out what exactly the person's arguing.
As just to make a point, almost on your point, precision is important. Precisely, ambiguity and vagueness do not mean the same thing. People often link them together, and they're not.
So what's ambiguity?
Ambiguity is when there's a sentence which could be interpreted or may mean two different things, but each meaning is distinct and understood. While vague is just something that is vague and unclear. So ambiguity is not the same as vague.
Thank you for that precise definition.
Good specificity.
And as I've stated before, sometimes premises are missing. They're implied but not stated. Sometimes the conclusion is missing. And just because one premise is false doesn't mean the conclusion shouldn't be accepted.
Right.
Premises may be independent. It's important to assess the adequacy of premises. Premises may not necessarily be true or false. They're not binary, 1 or 0, true or false. The world, the natural world, the world we live in, is oftentimes quite gray. And sometimes the premises might lead you to a degree of acceptance. And so we tend to suggest that with your conclusions, they also represent the degree of that the premises would support. So it's important to reflect the uncertainty of your premises in your conclusion. So in your conclusion, use plenty of maybes and likely. So if you have, say, a scientific study showing that 9 out of 10 times that this antibiotic will cure you, and then you would link it with logic saying that therefore you should use it since you want to be cured.
You will likely be cured. You can't say for sure you will be.
And therefore the conclusion would be you will likely be cured. Right?
Taking this antibiotic will increase your chance of being cured. So anything.
Right.
Like
So if you say this will cure you, you would be wrong. Yeah. But if you said this won't cure you, you'll be wrong too. So life tends to be like that. So you got to couch your conclusions with a lot of maybes and likelies, which makes you sound less forceful when you're up debating against
qualifying
people.
Statements are better. They're more accurate. Exactly.
And you should always be open to more evidence too. You say the current evidence shows this, and therefore we can conclude for now that this is true.
Right. That's very useful. I mean, the other point I think is that you could be wrong, and every time you have a debate, try to keep that in mind, even though sometimes it can be very hard if something has a lot of evidence for it. And and as you said, the qualifying statements are important.
Yeah. So critical thinking is all about taking a step back and examining both your existing beliefs that you happen to have, as well as claims being made by other people. So I'm not entirely sure how taking your kids out of classes is going to help their critical thinking skills, as many of these columnists claim.
Yeah, you're not even presenting them with another option. You're just not allowing them to hear one. It's really silly.
It's a sort of closing a mind of someone else.
On the other hand, is putting someone in a class where they learn about the world's religions going to help their critical thinking skills?
Yes, I think it would, because by learning about multiple religions, you kind of think, well, either one of these people are wrong. Maybe all of them are wrong. So, you know, when you kind of open your door to that, if you think there is only one philosophy and one religion, or you only really understand the specifics of one, then why do you have any reason to think that anyone in the world legitimately doubts maybe the one you're following?
Majority of the world's population is religious. Religion has a huge sway in most spheres of this world, and therefore it is useful to learn about such things. But as is certain specific premises and conclusions, many religions are founded upon this God is the correct God, and therefore you should act a certain way obeying this God. But if that first premise may be not so valid, once you learn out, but many other people have many other beliefs about many other gods, and they hear the same thing, that's going to raise some concerns to anyone who's...
So, of course, if a parent wants to withdraw their kid from this kind of class, they should do it for reasons other than protecting their critical thinking skills.
Correct.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not sure what else would that be, though.
The only reason to do it is to shelter them from knowledge that they don't want their
Well, an
children to
important part of critical thinking is, like the principle of charity, what Darren said, is exposing yourself to the arguments of their sides, like as much material as you can.
Exactly, entertaining as many arguments as you can.
Yeah,
it's not. It would be anathema to critical thinking to restrict yourself from hearing other arguments and not gaining knowledge.
But by that same token, when you present someone with an alternative explanation, especially in a school type situation, which is provably false, that's dangerous. I'm thinking of things like strengths and weaknesses for evolution arguments and things like that.
Right.
That's kind of counterproductive.
Like teaching creationism in science class. That's also been used as an argument, saying using critical thinking as an argument for teaching kids the weaknesses of evolution or the strengths of creationism.
Yeah.
That's just that. There you go. That represents a divide. Some people want it taught along evolution as a viable alternative, and some people thinking this is a great opportunity to show how silly some thinking can be and how to analyze critical thinking.
Yeah, I mean, if you can have like an intelligent dialogue, and instead of saying strength and weaknesses, say, you know what, some people don't believe this, and you know what, the evidence doesn't really support it.
Right. It would be fine in science class if they taught creationism as a way to show how arguments can be really poorly formed and not follow along with the evidence and show exactly why it's wrong. Or it'd be a great example of logical fallacies.
Right. It'd be a great topic for media studies or things like that.
Or there's a lot of stuff in science class that's like, here's what we used to think, and you know what, we don't think about it anymore. We don't think heat is a substance that goes from a hot substance to a cold substance and changes how it expands and stuff like that. But, context to everything, right?
Today, I just really brushed the surface of what critical thinking is. There's so many more topics that it goes into, and it's really fascinating. It's the best, like my college course on critical thinking totally changed my life, and is what got me into skepticism today. So I recommend everybody to find just like any textbook on critical thinking and check it out, because my textbook, I still refer back to it all the time.